Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Future of series. This is our seventh, in fact, in this series of Future of events. I'm Kevin Allen, the Chief Community Officer at OpenEXO. And if you were wanting to see some of the events that happened before, if you look down the side here and at that link just above my head, you can see all the replays of the events that have come before this event. So please do go ahead and do that. And today we are going to invite these amazing people who are sticking out the side of the page here to speak about the future of health. And that is Julia Hitzbleck, Ken Merkel, and Michael Friebe. And so really excited for them to share about the SciFi Hive they ran and the outcomes from that SciFi Hive. So I'm going to bring them up on stage and welcome all. How is everyone doing? Maybe we can start with you, Julia. How are things going?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for the nice introduction. Greeting from Berlin, Germany. It's very hot right now, but I think it's hot in most of the Northern Hemisphere right now.
Awesome. Michael doesn't seem to think so. It's nice and cool there.
No, I'm in Germany too, obviously, but I'm about 300 kilometers away, now 400 probably, and it's actually okay here. It's not that hot, but we had huge rain, so I had a really big disastrous trip yesterday, and all the trains were canceled. So anyway, it's all good, so it's all fine. But
perfect. And Ken in Alberta, Canada.
Yeah, it's hot here as well, and unlike Michael, we're not getting any rain, so our lawns and gardens are not doing very well right now.
We can share. We can give some.
Excellent.
Perfect. So we are going to head straight into a presentation from Ken. I think Ken's going to be starting up first, and then after the presentation, we'll have Q&A. So if you're watching, wherever you're watching this, you can, in the chat, ask questions as we go. So please do that so that we can have a bunch of questions at the end for the Q&A. So we'll hand over to you, Ken, and bring up your slides, and let's go.
Thanks, Kevin. So on March 20th, we had a SciFi Hive and the Future of Healthcare workshop, and we had participants from 18 different countries. Now, in 8 hours of intense collaboration, 7 stories in the future of healthcare, 20 years out, and some prototype comic books were created. Now, then we gave these prototypes to our writers and artists, and they developed them into a professional final comic book with all 7 visions in it. And then we had an unveil event. And at the unveil event, we kicked off a couple of challenges that were supported by the EXO economy to accelerate realization of these visions. Now, the event was sponsored by Infinity Healthcare, Masseuse.com, and Siemens Healthineers, and by all of the participants. And you've already met us, but it was a collaborative effort between Dr. Michael Friebe, Dr. Julia Hitzbleck, and myself, and our EXO Execute team. Now, because of that support by the sponsors and participants, we were able to publish the finished comic book under Creative Commons license for everyone to share and use freely. Now, our MTP at SciFi Hive is inspire imaginations that will change the world, and that's what we're hoping to be able to do by sharing the comic freely. Now, before we show a sampling of the comic, I'm going to ask Dr. Friebe to provide a quick recap of some of the trends that came out of the visions. Michael, you want to take over?
Yes, thank you very much. So I've given this presentation, I think, the 3rd time now. So I'm trying to speed up with this one because you don't want to, if you have listened to us before, then you don't want to hear it again. But one of the driving forces for this event was that we see healthcare as being one of the how would you say this to not offend everybody, but it's one of the least digitized segments. It's one of the segments that is probably the most still remaining in the third industrial revolution, or in at least the concept there. There has been very little done in terms of education, or advancing education and taking on exponential methodologies and exponential medicine. And we also actually are doing healthcare a little. We believe we should do healthcare a little differently in the future than we do right now. Right now, it's a sick care system, so you only go to the doctor when you're sick. yes, there is prevention models around, but it's not the typical thing. And you only go to a hospital when you actually have an event that makes you go to a hospital. You don't voluntarily go to a hospital, right? And so even the United Nations has seen in their Sustainable Development Goals that good health and well-being is something that we should really drive for, and that is really something that should be a super goal for humanity and globally. And so one of the things that we believe will happen is the P4 medicine. All these things are not from me, so I don't claim ownership of this one. This is basically stolen from the community, from the global one. That we have a predict. So we want to have medicine that predicts events from happening. With that, prevent you from getting sick. Should be personalized to you specifically rather than having a general approach, but it also requires you to participate in your own health. So you need to have something that makes sure that you are actually monitoring, that you know about the status, that you are actually taking the information that you get to improve and to thrive for longevity and good health. And development should actually be then on better outcomes in the future, should also improve clinical and clinicians' experience, but they have to be to a certain extent also cost disruptive or disruptive in general, because if you don't look at cost, we'll actually probably have something of a developed medicine and a developing nation medicine. We don't want that, or it should not be the goal of it. And there's lots of other challenges besides cost, demographics. We all get older. Good that we get older. It's not bad. Access, I just mentioned that. Maybe you go to the next slide. But we have, besides the fact that we have a lot of data available, we don't use this data. It's all fragmented, it's siloed. And I think that, if we use digital information and the data points that we have to actually create not only an analog medicine that we digitize, but we really use digital information to create more value, will have a huge effect on health in the future. So next one, quick. Okay, and I just put those out, and please don't see this is not necessarily the only thing we should do. But if we really look at making life on this planet more livable, and we actually want to address health in general, we should look at some of the risk and behavior patterns that we do. Remember the participate P in the 4 Ps. You need to participate. You need to work on your diet. You need to work on your exercise. You should not smoke that much. Maybe don't use any drugs, etc., etc. That requires, however, that there is a good socioeconomic background. And if we get this under control, these things, and we monitor these things, we could positively affect these chronic conditions that then, at the end of the day, cost 80% of the total cost that is associated with healthcare. That's a huge amount of money, and there's a huge amount of effort that is associated with that. So there's a lot of other health technology trends besides AI. I have another chart on this one very quick. So there's a lot of things that are involved in this, and I think that one of the things that we wanted to get out of this healthcare future of healthcare challenge and the vision in the vision in the future is, how can we use all these devices, all these technologies to converge? That's something that, Daniel Kraft and Peter Diamandis say. There's a convergence of technology to actually reach something really big in the future. And we should not look at healthcare only, but we should at everything around that helps us to actually make that a better world. And there's a lot of things going on. Next slide. So it's not just AI, and it's not just a future hospital. You just can go one more quick, Ken. It's not just a future hospital. The question that I ask my students, for example, is like, what kind of hospital do we need in 20 years if we don't get sick anymore? Yes, we will still get sick. And we will still need a hospital. But do we need the kind of hospital that we have right now? What will happen? So these are the kind of looks. If you look in the future, you not only predict what technology may be able to do, but you also see what kind of effect that has on society, on employment, maybe on business models. And there's huge effects if you really think that through. And ethics, what are you going to do with all the data? And I think that's one of the things, Ken and Julia, that we found out, and that there is a huge concern. What will happen with the data? How much trust is in the data? How much trust is in the outcome? And I think that is something that also the challenge participants that we have now will address, hopefully, with their future work. Okay, one more, I think. Yeah, so let's just go to this one because we'll show it anyway. Maybe sorry, maybe we'll hold it because the 7 stories. Go back one more time, Ken. Sorry, just look at the bottom one because I summarized the 7 stories that we have, and you're welcome to download them all. Ken and Kevin probably provide the link to the full cartoon stories. But there were 3 out of the 7 that involved wearables. There was one diagnostic imaging, 2 involved drones. 6 out of 7 believe that artificial intelligence is something very important in the future. Predictive measures, 2 nanobots, 3 holograms, 3D printing, 2. So you see already that the participants thought about using these technologies and thought of how to employ them and believed they were very important. And particularly if you look now at this artificial intelligence, or as we say right now, artificial narrow intelligence, because it is a narrow application, it probably will stay for that for a while. You need to deal with data ownership, data usage, privacy issues, opt-in versus opt-out. So you can't be forced or should not be forced, or maybe you should be forced. Ethics that is related to the data business models and all these kind of things that, data will change everything that we have right now in healthcare. And what we need to do, the next page, is to really come up with that. We need to ask a lot of questions. And I also know from the Open Extra community, there's some really great people. There's these 5 why questions. You always have to ask why, and you get down to the problem, understand the problem. And if we ask these questions, I just pick one out here. If we solve chronic diseases, what will that mean for longevity? So think it through. What does it mean for longevity? Increase, decrease, not no decrease, but what does it mean if you're living longer? You need to have care in the later part of your life. How is that going to happen if you don't have people that are there to help you? So we need to think about a future that we'd like to design in the healthcare space that we would like to see, and that takes some of these things into consideration. So questions are the most important things with that respect. And we need to continue to ask questions to really come to a really cool future for our personal health. I think that was it from my part, right?
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So we're gonna play just one of the comic videos, and we'll have Kevin put the links to the YouTube channel that has all of them. There's a playlist there called the SciFi Hive Future of Healthcare playlist that has all of the comics, and the site as well that has the digital comic book there. So we're going to play one as a sampling, and then feel free to go view all of the other videos and look at the comic and share it out as widely as you can. We're going to actually talk about a challenge for sharing it. So I'm going to start the first comic video right now. And interesting enough, we'll talk a bit about it after, but it has all the components of P4 really in there.
Mary's digital twin saves her life.
Mary is encouraged to use a digital twin to manage her health. She is reluctant, but her twin helps her to understand the need for change. Insurance companies encourage healthy habits to reduce sick care, and Mary becomes a model of health supported by her health insurance company.
You don't look well. Mom, are you okay?
No. I'm feeling a bit dizzy lately.
We just learned about a new digital health monitoring system at school. It helps you maintain good health. Please try it.
I don't think this is going to work for me, but I'll try for Ken.
Hey, it's me. Your digital twin. I'm detecting dizziness and that you are often stressed and depressed.
Yes, that's true.
You have high blood pressure. Your heart is beating fast. Your lifestyle is causing severe health problems. What about eating healthier? Going outside for fresh air?
Yeah, whatever. I don't have much influence on my future health.
2 weeks later.
I see. You still don't feel well. And you haven't changed much. If you don't try, this is your life in 20 years. But with a bit of effort, this could be your future. Don't worry, I'll help you. We are on this journey together. Instead of buying the chocolate cake, why don't you get the strawberries? Why don't you go on a walk to relieve the stress?
2 weeks later.
Well done. Your blood pressure is down, and your risk of stroke is 30% less than 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I feel better. But a healthy lifestyle is expensive.
Did you know your health insurance provider will pay you to improve your health?
Let me show you how Mary's health has improved since she's improved her lifestyle.
Wow, very impressive. We will reduce your insurance by 30%. Would you be willing to promote the digital twin approach to others?
1 year later.
Thank you for helping me do this lifestyle change. Couldn't be happier.
Wow, you are looking great.
Thank you. I owe it all to my digital twin. You should try it.
I don't know. I doubt that it'll work for me.
He has the same thoughts I had. I need to help promote this.
I'm proud to present Miss Smith. She's such a role model for many of us.
I couldn't have done it without my digital twin that supported me the whole time.
So, like I mentioned, the intent of the comics are to inspire imaginations to change the world. So we started 2 challenges to try and make that happen from the workshop. First, we have the Vision Realization Challenge, and it's in 2 phases. And the first phase is already complete, where the participants created a pitch for their idea. Now, one of the interesting things is, forget about technology and all of those kinds of things that are in the comic books that can be used for healthcare. There's an underlying theme that was in the stories about acceptance of that technology, and that's really what's something that the participants noticed. And so both of the challenge winners were granted 15,000 exos each to reach an MVP, and both of those challenge winners are really looking at helping people be more aware of how technology can improve health benefits. So we have Team 1 that's led by Beatrice Barbazeni from Germany, and they're working on an app called Be Aware to help create awareness around technology like AI and how it can help drive forward those better health outcomes. And then we have Team 2 that's led by Angela Fay from Canada, and she's working on a mobile innovation zone to increase awareness around technology that augments human performance, and things like exoskeletons. Now, that link for the SciFi Hive YouTube channel, you can also see the 2 pitches there. And the second challenge is really focused on getting these visions shared out to as much as the world as possible. So if we can get somebody, even one person, in imagination inspired from these comics to move forward some of the ideas, then we've done a lot. So anyone can take part in this challenge. You can go to lecreme.ca/sci-fi hive, and you sign up and you get a personalized link for your comic to share. And then any unique visitors leading up to August 31st are going to be associated to you, and the top 10 sharers get awarded a share of 10,000 exos. It's all supported by Exo Economy. It's greatly appreciated. I think we can really drive forward these visions and the ideas within these visions. We can just get these comics shared out to everybody. Now, with the massive success of the Future of Healthcare Global Sci-Fi Hive, we just want to let you know we're working on the future of food for the fall and looking for sponsors. So if you're interested, you can email info@scifihive.com. And seats for that workshop are going to go on sale in the next month. So watch scifihive.com/food to keep up to date. So now we just want to open it up to questions. Give it back to Kevin.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks so much for sharing what you did. There are a few questions that are very future of health related. So about and perhaps some of these questions are not answerable. But let's take a look anyway. The first one was about diagnostics at home. So the question is, like, do we have a prediction for when we see like most of diagnosis happening at home and like cheaply? So I don't know.
This is really an accelerating process. I mean, if you think about the tests you can do today already at home, I mean, whether if you're diabetic, of course, you measure your blood sugar no matter where you are. You don't even have to be at home. With our gadgets, we basically monitor our vital signs. Of course, it's not a diagnostic yet, but there's lots that can be done. And the transfer from a lab scale analysis to something that is portable and maybe can be read out by your cell phone or progressed right away is really just picking up. And this is one of these examples where like emerging technologies are, converging and really picking up. And whether it's 2030 or maybe even before, it's sometimes really hard to imagine, but it will definitely happen, because even in the pandemic, lots of people don't want to go and see a doctor. So it's the convenience of your home, and technology enables this now.
I think it's definitely accelerated by COVID somewhat with telehealth. Telehealth really picking up. And if you start incorporating some of these wearables with telehealth, that's kind of the first step towards that. One of the things, though, we're seeing here in Canada is now that the pandemic here is kind of slowing down, our system does not support telehealth very well. And many doctors, because I believe, and I don't know the details, I think they get paid less for a phone call than a in-office visit, are starting to switch back to in-office visits. So, it goes to, it's more than technology that has to change. The whole system has to change.
That's why I very much believe that some of these innovations and some of these driving countries will not be coming from the developed world. They will be coming more from a developing world, because the need of actually getting some healthcare that is better than getting no healthcare at the moment it is significantly higher. So I think that the acceptance of a digital doctor is also higher, and the acceptance of a digital doctor here in Europe or in the US or in Canada is because you have a relation to your doctor, you go to them, and it's a personal relation. It's a little bit more difficult to switch to a digital companion at the moment, but it's significantly easier if you have no access to a doctor to have medical advice coming from some device that actually helps you assess your state your state at the moment. And maybe a quick comment also to the question. And I don't know either of when it's going to happen. But one of the things that we have discussed a little bit already in this group right now is the hurdles that we have to jump over. The hurdles are acceptance by the medical community. And that's actually difficult. I think the most problematic segment of acceptance is the medical profession themselves. So they don't really want to accept it. They don't see it as a tool that helps them assess. They see it as a competition, which I think is wrong. I think it is actually something that would help them, and that is something that would actually help deal with the patients on a long term, and maybe even a more personalized basis. You have more time for the real segments. So the other thing is regulatory aspects. What we typically do in medical devices is we compare a device or a software with a human result. So the gold standard is the human evaluation, but the human evaluation has some error built in already, right? And particularly if you go into a system that maybe has multi-sensoric input, how are we going to do this? How are we going to check, on whether that's really valuable or not? I think there needs to be some trust in there that these systems will actually create something really valuable. And last but not least, I think you gave me a good hint because one of the devices that I'm building is called BodyTune, is actually doing things at home. So we'll be able to actually monitor, things at home, and I think that will come. But I think we need to have some early adopters who play around and provide data points to make it more visible. So I would say it's just a coarse guess, but when you do a prediction, you're always wrong at the end of the day. I would say within 10 years, we have something at home that would not eliminate a doctor, would not eliminate a hospital, but would eliminate stupid visits to the doctor. Just think back of how many times you've gone to the doctor where you said, I don't really have to go to the doctor, but I have to because I need to get a prescription, right? And this is a stupid doctor visit, and I think we can eliminate those relatively quickly. I hope.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's very interesting. You say that, Michael. I mean, today I actually had medicine delivered. I'm on chronic medicine. For my thyroid, right? But every 6 months I have to go visit a doctor for them to write down that I still need this chronic medicine, and then every year I have to go for blood tests. Now, that's fine, but I don't really. I could do that myself, right? Or I could have an AI that could remind me to do that, or whatever the case may be. I was quite excited that I at least didn't have to go into the pharmacy and wait, and I could get it delivered to me. So things are moving forward. But I'm really looking forward to the day where, my toilet can tell me that like my gut is healthy. My teeth, my fork can tell me that I'm eating right, or whatever the case is. But maybe I'm living a bit in the future.
You brought up Michael's favorite topic, which is poopables.
It is something that is, I mean, this is something which is new to me. I'm an engineer. I'm not a medical doctor. So, and as an engineer, I'm very excited about this kind of stuff. And then you read in the medical journals that analyzing your output, right, gives you so much information about what your digestive systems looks like, how it works, how the general body works, and that has an effect on your neurological activities. So the bottom has an effect on the top, right? And basically controlling, saying, by the way, I think you should actually have some supplements with bacterial, or we need to change your flora somehow, and that will actually help your brain. I mean, isn't that amazing? I thought it's the coolest thing in the world. And the problem that we have, and then that's why these tools could be extremely helpful, is that we have specialized doctor. We have a neurologist, but the neurologist doesn't look at your poop, right? And then we have a proctologist who may look at your poop, but he's not looking at your brain. And maybe these devices that we have in combination, they could actually help assess it significantly better. I think that has happened to every one of us. If you go to an orthopedic doctor because you think if you have an orthopedic problem, he will find an orthopedic problem. But it may not be an orthopedic problem. Maybe something else, right? So
that cross-functional diagnosis, right? So
yeah.
Now, one thing that you did mention during the presentation was sort of around health records, right? And like health records right now are mostly manual and horribly fractional, right? So I mean, I'll take myself as an example. I grew up in a town and had a doctor, and everything is in a paper file there. I then went to university in another town and had a doctor there, and I have a few records in a paper file there. I then moved to another city where I started working, and I have some documents in a paper folder. And now I've moved cities again, right? So, what is the future there? And Carlos on LinkedIn was also just saying, his 2 cents is that when it does all get digitized, there is like a massive issue around security and like who has the endpoints, who owns it, where does it live, all of these things. But I think that sort of digitization of records, if that doesn't happen, it's probably quite hard for a lot of the other elements to happen. So what's the thinking there around sort of getting that digitized, and then who has access and how? Because how can we collaborate without giving away our data? Like, how could we give our data to research and benefit from it, or something like that, right? What are the thoughts there?
I think Julia is the expert on this one, but I have a comment later on the ethics and that one. So
yeah. I mean, the good thing about data is that it's not a deflationary resource, right? So we can share it as many times as we want, and it's our decision. So I think also when you look at the comics, everybody agreed that data is key because it enables so many things. And we have in none of these stories a topic that, oh my God, I need to consider whether I share my data to have a health benefit or help one of my relatives. It was just set in stone. Of course, that means that there is proper safety, security measures in place, and that you can control where you can share data with. I mean, there's some really great examples already happening around the world, because in the end, healthcare data right now is super valuable for the industry because it's hard to get your hands on. And even though we are producing more and more data, it's not necessarily structured in the right way. It's difficult to have longitudinal information. So there are some companies already who are trying to build a platform where you can actually decide on, I want to share my data, and they do the monetization for you, and you get a share on this, which is a super smart way. However, not every country is as advanced to have the legal legal framework in place to do so. But if you look back 10 years and think about what kind of transactions you did online and what kind of data you owned, and now look 10 years in the future, you will be way more advanced than in the past. So I think it's not a question on whether we will have access to it. I think there's so many people who have an interest in having this in place that they will also find a solution to get this, the security, data security in place.
Yeah, I totally agree. My dog is coming. He wants to have some lunch. But I'm not a philosopher or an ethicist, but I think that, you know, data protection and data usage regulatory approaches are also 20 years behind the reality, and they need to be adjusted too. At the end of the day, and I'm a little bit more how would it general now. That's probably not completely true what I'm saying right now, but at the end of the day, one person that is very careful and very conscious about sharing data could prevent 99 other people from sharing their data, because that is what is in the foreground. So I think we need to adjust that, and we need to also see what are the benefits versus the disadvantages. And the benefits of sharing data, and it does not need to be a Julia Hitzbleck or Ken Merkel or Kevin Eller data. It could be a 45-year-old male data, anonymized to a certain extent, is so valuable. And what we have seen in the past is that people who have a disease are more likely to share their data because they hope that something will come out of it, and that they are helping maybe others. People who are healthy are less likely to want to share their data because they're still healthy, right? On the other hand, everybody has to understand that a healthy person is the pre-stage of a sick person. So you're always healthy before, right? And that there is a certain amount of data that maybe you can read from a healthy person that will give you information about when you get sick, what kind of disease you will get. So I think we need to adjust the approach with data. We have these electronic health records. I can only talk for Germany. We are talking about this for probably 20 years now. And maybe, Julia, you also know more about that than me, but maybe we will actually have it next year. I'm not entirely sure yet. But
you could have it right now already, I think.
But my doctor doesn't have it, so maybe your mine doesn't. I asked him. So we are very happy that we have this digital pass now for the vaccination. That went pretty quick, actually. But the question is also, and I think we should maybe we can put this in the round later on, who is the owner of the data? So if you really ask the healthcare providers, they have sometimes a different opinion. Mm-hmm. The radiologist believes that it's his data. Yeah, it's my MRI that was used. Yeah, but the health insurance says, well, I paid for it, right? So it's maybe my data. At the end of the day, I believe it's my data. My data is my data. And my data also means that I can decide on whether to share it or not, to opt in or out. And we're not even there yet. Nobody has their data. It's very difficult. And you just described, Kevin, also your progress with the handwritten data. You don't have access to this data. You don't even know what's in there. Yeah.
No, absolutely, Michael. And in fact, again, I'll just come back to my story. As I said, every year I have to get levels of thyroid hormone tested. I can't even go, according to the country's laws here in South Africa, go and just get that test done, because I'm apparently not smart enough to read that data, and therefore that data requires a trained doctor to just say yes, it can be done, and then it has to be read by them. Like, I can't even get the results from the lab. It has to be sent through to a doctor, according to the laws here. Which I sort of understand, but also it's like, really? So,
it's definitely not a technology problem. And I think both Michael and Julia hit on a little bit of how we're going to get there, because it's going to happen. And that's the value proposition, right? So there's a couple of things. When you're sick, you want to share your data. And I think many people, if they see a health benefit to sharing their data, would share their data. The other thing is monetization of that data and being able to personally monetize your own data. That will also help to drive this forward. Here in Alberta, anyways, in Canada, we have electronic health records, and we can see the results of ours. And they've really simplified it so that basically you'll go in and see the results of your test, and it'll be like red, yellow, or green. And it doesn't really tell you much, but it tells you whether or not the results of your test mean you should go back to your doctor and kind of see what's happening there.
Well, it shows you that whether you are in the line of the 90% percentile. Right?
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
It's kind of like statistics to a certain extent.
Yeah. And I think we'll get there, though, because the value propositions are starting to come together for sharing data. And once that happens, then, the humans will overcome. The technology exists already to keep it secure and to allow for you to control sharing. We just got to get the humans there now.
Absolutely. Now, Paloma on YouTube has just said, hi, what is the role of mental and emotional health in the prevention and management of overall health? And what do you see are trends in this area sort of going forward?
I think we've already seen like a huge boom of mindfulness in the last couple of years. Even before the pandemic, more and more people started to meditate, being very clear on that if you are mentally stable, and I mean, you don't have to be really sick, but we all live in a super busy world, and our brain doesn't have the capacity anymore to digest all this information that it comes in, and we actually need to take a break sometimes to also help our brains to relax and also have better health. And I think this connection is getting stronger and stronger and even better understood. Quite often, you still start from the physical health side and then said, oh, maybe you need to take a couple of days off. But basically, that's what you do when you're sick, right? That's the last resort. You need to relax or recover from something. But if you actually have these tiny little breaks throughout your day, you're also helping your body to be in a better shape. And there's also with technology, it gets easier. It becomes more mainstream. You're not this super strange person who tries to meditate when people are thinking of different cultures and maybe monks doing this. But they see that everyone can do it, and with the right support, that really helps a lot. And emotional health really also strongly connected to it, either from one way or also as a add-on to your normal therapy or whatever you have.
Well, mental health, to a certain extent, in my face, has also something to do with happiness, like a happiness monitoring, or a fun monitoring. If you don't have fun and you're not happy, you will have mental problems to a certain extent, and maybe I'm again wrong from a clinical side, but I think fun is a starting point, and relaxation and stimulation is a very important factor on happiness. So I think we have enough tools now that remind us. The problem is that we are, and I think Julian mentioned that we are too busy that we always follow that and we see the immediate benefits. We are a society now that needs to have immediate rewards, right? I mean, you want to do something, then I want to get it right away. And if you do something on meditation, it takes a while before you have an effect. I mean, in all honesty, I've started meditation and I thought it was good, and then I stopped it again, and then whatever. So I should start it again. I know that it's good, but we are trained right now that we need these immediate rewards, and that's sometimes what you don't have. And to health, there is a lot more than just going to a doctor. It's what we said before. It's how do you eat? That's also not an immediate response. It takes a long time before your stomach and your digestive system gets adjusted to the new food intake. Exercise. when you start doing exercise, everything hurts. You have muscle pain. It's like, oh, I'm not going to continue this. So this is not an immediate reward system, right? So, but this is more important than health to be the healthcare system. It's more important that you actually follow, and we need to really do something in that. And I believe that the mental part is probably more important than anything else. We definitely need to do something now.
The participation again is very important, right? And with especially mental wellness, that requires a high level of participation from the patient, I guess. But one thing that I noticed though with the pandemic is definitely increased awareness of mental wellness. At least here in Canada, there's a lot more focus and of mental wellness and acceptance of mental illness as an illness. And it's as a it's always been seen as something negative, but a lot more acceptance of something that needs to be monitored and dealt with appropriately, because the mental wellness can really start affecting your physical wellness really quickly.
Yeah, Paloma's said thank you for the response, and just asking sort of follow up there, saying, do you think like better science and then sensors would actually help, right? That you as an individual could actually have a way of visualizing your mental health, right? I mean, I know that you get these like meditation bands that people put on their heads or whatever, but like
Muse, really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you can also monitor that fairly easily. There's a lot of physical side effects to your mental health declining, and we already have our Fitbits and those kinds of things and lots of sensors that could be used, at least to start enticing you for the participatory part. So if your pressure is rising, maybe there's at least notifications saying you need to take a break, you need to slow down or whatever, and trying to get ahead of that. So I think that a lot of that stuff exists already, but it's dealing with those alerts or the results of what your body's telling you to do, right? And getting a little bit of early intervention there.
Yeah. I think that was also nicely shown in the video with the digital twin, because lifestyle change is not that easy, right? So you need a constant reminder, and you need a really visual display of either how you're doing right now or how you would look like if you continue either or, right? So that really helps you to change. And with all these sensors, of course, it's not only about mental health, but it's just one really important component. And if you work on this, then you're in a more relaxed state. You don't need so much sugar or fats to satisfy your needs, and you're maybe more likely to go out. And the other way around, if you also focus on food, you're overall in better health. So
actually, we are part of the Open Exo community, right? And this is Cam. So let's look at the Exo canvas for a sec, right? So engagement, crowd, and community, those are two of the attributes that we always say are that important, and particularly for what we just talked right now, they are important. You need to have some form of gamification built in. It's a form of engagement, and we need to have a crowd and community that we can compare, that we can talk to, that we can exchange, that we maybe even see progress, right? And that we see, maybe some people may even think that their mental health is really down, and it is not really down, or on the other way around. So I think that this is these kind of devices, tools that we can use at home to monitor, they have a lot to do with the Exo attributes, and if you really play them out. So I think that if we think that through, and we create communities around your personal health, you will be very willing to share data. You will be very willing to share stories, and will be very willing to share results. And these results are motivating to others then. So, or hopefully not demotivating, but sometimes it could also, it took me like 5 years to get this done. That's demotivating.
No, absolutely. Now, the thing, you brought up the four Ps, right? Is this framework something that sort of mainstream health sort of healthcare are looking at, whether it's like government health ministers or sort of like hospital groups, doctors, or is it something that's sort of a lot more fringe, a lot more edge?
Yeah, I am. Maybe I say something completely wrong now, and that people will actually hate me for the rest of my life. I am not entirely sure, and this is more formulated as a question on whether healthcare in the future should be a business. Really bad what I'm saying, particularly to the capitalistic world. I'm in a capitalistic world too, and I like making money with certain things. But if you really look at it from a money making or from a business model point of view, being healthy is not a good business model. Being sick is a much better business model, and so we have to change business models around it, and it's going to be very difficult. The business model determine where you invest and determine also what the activities are, also from a research side. So this is a little difficult, and we may have to think also a little disruptive in terms of how will we do that. And I'm going back one more time to my belief that maybe developing nations will actually be the driving force because they don't have these type of business models around. And they have a need of staying healthy and maybe diagnosing early, maybe finding information, and they have no money to actually go and invest in the healthcare system, or a lot of people don't. So maybe there is a different starting point from there. So and whatever I just said right now, don't stone me for that, right? Because it may actually still take a lot of time, but I have a feeling that people understand that there will be a shift in the future, but they're not necessarily willing to really be a starting point. And I also see that from the research perspective that I'm to a certain extent coming from. When you think about changing business models or changing ideas, you need to be disruptive. Disruption is not something that people necessarily like. Sorry, one more sentence.
Yeah.
In the open EXO community, or in the EXO, we like disruption because we believe disruption is cool. In the real life, disruption is not cool. People don't like it.
Yeah.
And healthcare disruption, that's even less liked, by most players. But it needs to be done.
Well, and like we always say in the community, is that it's likely the disruption is not going to come from inside the industry. It's going to come from outside the industry. If you see what companies like Apple are doing and things like that in the healthcare space. But if you really think about it, a business model based on healthcare should be far more valuable than one based on sick care. Everybody wants to be healthy. Only the sick people need the doctors right now in a sick care system. So there's far less clients in a sick care system than there is in a healthcare system.
Sure.
No, absolutely, Ken. Pretty much what you've sort of explained there. Like, I know it's a bit random to mention, but if you think about how many more people take taxis because of ride-sharing apps, right? Like, I never used to take taxis, really. And I take taxis all the time now because I have a tool that makes it so much better. And so they just grew that market. And so you're 100% right in saying that the amount of, like, everybody fits into a healthcare model, whereas a sick care model only a few people fit into. But as Michael did point out, currently someone who is healthy, eats their own grown food from home, rides a bicycle, is a massive drain on a GDP, right? The person who drives a Mercedes-Benz, eats out all the time, is adding so much more to a country's GDP, which is a massive problem, Michael. I agree with you 100%.
But let's keep the Mercedes-Benz in place, please. All right. So we have Germany, right? We need to make sure that's still.
A Tesla, driving a Tesla.
That's worse. That's worse.
So I mean, it's and I definitely agree that from a healthcare point of view, the model needs to change. But I like what you've said there, Ken, that you've got a much bigger market if you're into healthcare.
Yep.
Absolutely right.
And we are actually seeing this trend happening already. So all these offerings around health and well-being that came up in the last couple of years, whether this is personalized nutrition, supplements, whether this is actually maybe even not diagnosing, but monitoring your health status. So tests that you previously had to get ordered at the doctors, you can now order online. You get the test kit at home, you prick your fingers, and with a couple drops of blood, you send it off and you get the results back. Of course, it's not a diagnosis because they are legally not allowed to do so. So it's an aid to help you with your overall health status, and maybe then also take the right supplements to feel better. And lots of people are investing in it because it's consumer friendly, but they also see this as an entry point, because if we can't push from the true health side because there's too much of the existing players being against change, you need to find a different way into the system and maybe win the customer over, and then at some point the market is ready to be truly disrupted.
And now you think it through it. Like, why do you have to send it away? Why can you not do it at home? Why don't you get the results right away? And why don't you plug them in? And why don't you just use the 3 trillion other data points that you have and just compare, And those are the things that will happen. And the business model right now for this company is receiving these packages and analyzing them. But that possibly will fall away too.
Yeah. So, but then you get 3D printed, being able to 3D print personalized vitamins based off of that, and we start to tighten up that iteration so that that's happening very constantly and regularly and done at home. Then, we're going to really move ahead quickly.
Yeah. We need to be a little bit careful, though, that we don't overdiagnose ourselves and over-treat ourselves. That's a little scary, too, because there's this old saying, right, in medicine, if you're healthy at home, you just have not been diagnosed properly. You always have something. But does it have an effect, right? Does it really change anything if you deal with it? And I think sometimes sometimes you're doing too much in health, and sometimes we do not enough on the areas which probably have a more significant impact on your health. But anyway.
Now, Michael, you've actually just preempted the question that was up next, which is very much around the whole idea of being able to have a future where we can see and know like everything, but we constantly have, like, for example, cancer cells that the anti-cancer fighters inside of us are actually taken care of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea around having like a personal health dashboard, we're not a car, like, with a dashboard. We're not mechanical, but we are pretty mechanical. So where does that that dashboarding sit? Like, what is too much information, not enough? It's
a very, very good question, and the question is also, we're going back to ethics now. So the ethics is, if I find something as a doctor, for example, do I have an obligation to treat it? Possibly, possibly. But the question is, what does treatment do to you? Is it detrimental? Does it really help you? The other thing is, if Julia would know, I just pick you, Julia, right now because I wanted to use the breast cancer part. So you would know you have a 2 millimeter tumor in your breast. It's not going to kill her right now. It may be dangerous when it grows. So you need to monitor it. But what does it do to her state, to her mental state? I have a tumor in my breast. The same thing happens with men with prostate. There's a very high chance, if you're 60 years old, I think half of the people who are 60 years have some form of prostate, some problems with the prostate, right? And identified. But you really need to do something. But what does it do to your mental stage? If I have a problem with my prostate, is that helpful or not? So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But sometimes over information is not always helpful. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that are now like out there that are doing these like full body scans, and you go for hundreds of tests. It seems to cost a lot, and this sort of peeks into another question that there was around making healthcare accessible to all. All these tests and whatever. Super.
That's not a way to make it accessible, that's for sure.
Yeah. But is it valuable? It's really interesting, right? Because from a longevity point of view, perhaps it is valuable. But yeah, I don't know if there's any thoughts just around that comment as we sort of look to wrap this up and have final comments from everybody.
I think to Michael's point, getting all those tests and DNA testing and things like that, and even me, I'm a little bit concerned about getting DNA testing because things are going to show up in there that I won't fully understand. And I think it would impact your mental state to have all of these minor little things that sometimes you don't need to deal with, know about all of that. And then you start spiraling and thinking about those things. So I think there are, to Michael's point, some dangers in that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing about technology is that it gets more and more powerful over time, and at the same time, the cost is dropping. So even now, these full body checkups are only something that really well people can afford. In 10 years, it will not be at the same price point anymore. Of course, there will be new technology in place at a different price point, but general diagnostics are getting cheaper and smaller and portable. So the accessibility is also developing in the right direction. It's not there yet, and it will definitely take a lot of time still to be fully equally distributed around the world. But I think with better access to mobile data and the tools are getting cheaper, you also make this gap smaller and smaller day by day.
I want to point out one more time the open access teaching is the 6 Ds, right? Digital, disrupt, and then you have at some point in time a dematerialization, demonetization, and a democratization. So we are seeing that that we go in this deep path clearly on this one, and having this. I know there's a couple of companies also in the Bay Area, and I know that the open access community is a little bit attached to some of these companies. That will happen. That at the end of the day, you take all the data points. And we do this in research too. We have like 500 features, and then we find out, we actually only need 10 out of the 500. We don't know which 10 initially. And this is kind of like what I think is happening with this. You collect all the data points, you do the full body MRI, do the DNA, you do all blah, 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 blah. And then you will actually find out that 3/4 of these points are not relevant for your health. But you need to gather them first, plug them into some AI system or some machine learning system, and then find out which ones are the relevant ones. And that's the dematerialization and the demonetization part. And I think we'll get to that point relatively quickly. And then it's accessible to everyone. I hope it will be accessible to everyone. And the question to me is should the health insurance not be happy to send you to one of these centers every year or every 2 years? And let's not overdo it, right? I mean, doing too often the check is also not helpful. But and that's basically the job they have. And then maybe they're even the guardian of your data to a certain extent. You can make them a guardian and say, do not tell me all the little stuff that is happening with me if it's not relevant. Well, maybe that's a way to do it. Or maybe the doctors actually do being this guardian. I think that's what I believe will happen, is that you have this medical supporter, helper that will help guard your data. And in all honesty, with the DNA test that I've done it 2 years ago. I brought it to my doctor. He did not know what to do with it. So, we need to train the doctors as well.
Absolutely. And another thing I think we also have to remember is that as technology is advancing, as research can collaborate more and more around the world, we're going to find out more and more stuff, right? There is still so much we don't know. Having also done a DNA test, there's studies that show the opposites for the same genes, and there's still so much that we're going to learn about. We need to make sure that people are understanding that, I guess, and there's not too much fake news and all of that. But that's a whole other topic. It's been amazing having you here, chatting. We have reached the top of the hour, and so I want to respect all of your times. Just to say a massive thank you for joining us. Really, really great to have you to speak about the future of health. If there's anything that each of you want to just share as we end off today.
I would just say that part of healthcare is what we eat. So come and join us on the future of food, and we'll also start moving that forward and look where we can use food to keep us healthier.
I think that self-empowerment is a great way of getting insights from your data and deriving the right action points out of it. And it gets easier and easier with technology and with the right gadgets that translate the data into this advice. So some things you can't take control of, but there is quite a lot you can do to keep staying healthy and maybe prevent diseases or get better.
I'm taking Ken's quick advice with the food. There is clear evidence that eating a lot of tomato will help prevent prostate cancer for men. So this is the best thing you can do is eat tomatoes. That's really true. I'm not making this up. So food and health have a lot to do with each other. I agree with you. It's not very digital and not very exponential, but it still is a good advice.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks so much for joining us. And we'll see you all around in the Open EXO community.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So thanks, everyone, for joining us at this Future of Health event. I'm going to end off this show just with a quick ad about the EXO Awards, which are taking place very soon, where we're going to be highlighting some amazing EXO organizations around the world. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.